Welcome back. Here we are in the Synapse studio. Let's create a new pipeline. Let's give it a meaningful name as well. So I call this one Let's Create Silver Trip Data Green. And this pipeline is going to be specific for trip data processing. But you can turn this into a generic pipeline like we did before, but that's not what we are doing. We're going to just create it for the trip data. But it'll be up to you if you want to turn it into a generic pipeline which processes all of the partition data. In our case, we only have one partition data set, which is trip data. So this is good enough. So the first thing we want to do is to create a script activity, as we discussed, because we need to get the distinct year and month from a branch table. Let's give a meaningful name for our script activity. And now let's click on Settings and we need to select the linked service. So we need the serverless SQL pool linked service. That's what I'm going to select, and it gives you the option to write your query. So one difference between what we did before and now is that previously we used CETA statement, so we used the non-query option. But when you do a select, you will have to use the query option. So that's the only difference. So under query, we are going to write the query by interpreting the query here. I'm going to write it in a script so that we can test it and make sure it works before copying it to the pipeline. So let's do that. I'm going to the script and then just click on New SQL Script. And the first thing we want to do is to switch to the database, which is the NYC Taxi LDW. Now we want to get the distinct year and month from a bronze view. Let's do the select statement for that. So this command should select the year and month from the bronze view, which is the trip data green cab. So let's execute this and hopefully it gives us back all the years and months. And as you can see, I've got all the year and month here for 2020 and 2021. So this is the SQL we want to run. So I'm going to just copy that and put it into our pipeline, and that's everything for the script activity. So let's execute this and make sure it brings us back the data. So that's executed successfully. Let's go to the output. And as you can see here, output has got a JSON structure. So you've got a JSON structure which has got results set array. And within the array we got 19 occurrences and each one has got the value. So we've got the rows of years 2020-01, 2021-01, and all of those values are there. So the next thing we want to do is to write a for each statement to iterate over the array here, which is the rows array. So we'll have to access the output and then access the result set and go into the rows and just iterate over and call the delete activity and the stored procedure activity. So let's write the for each statement. So let me link that too as well. Let me give it a meaningful name. And now in settings, you will have to specify the items through which you want to iterate through. So click on the Add Dynamic Content and it will tell you which output you can use here, which is the activity output, which is the get a trip here, and that's the our script activity. So let's pick that one, and it goes up to output. But if you remember within the JSON, we wanted the first occurrence, which is 0. Here and within that we wanted to iterate over rows. So that should now give us the array from that JSON structure. And that's what I got all the years and months, and we should be able to iterate over that. So let me click OK. And as we did previously, we'll have to do activities. But before that, let me quickly walk you through these two options here, which are quite important. If you click on sequential, then you have the 19 occurrences. It's going to do one after the other. So it'll process the first month first and then the next one and so on. But if you wanted to do things in parallel, then you leave that unticked. And if you don't want to have all 19 running at the same time, which you don't normally want to because you want to control how much you are throttling at the same time. So you can specify the batch count. So let's say actually we want to run 5 partitions at a time. So what will happen is that they start with a 5, and as soon as one of them has finished it'll bring in another one. So any point in time that only 5 occurrences are running at the same time. So let me leave it as 5 and I'll show you how it works when we test it. And now click on the activities that you can click on the pencil here, or you can go to activities. And click on the pencil here, and this is where you're going to have your delete activity and the stored procedure activity. So let's do the delete activity first. So this is going to be deleting the partition. So I'm going to just call that delete partition, and we want to go to the source, and let's pick the dynamic source because we don't want the taxi zone because that's for the taxi zone data. This is the one we want to use as another data set here expects the folder path to be sent in as a parameter, but in this case the folder part, this is slightly different. It's not a dynamic value. So previously we had things like silver/taxi zone, but here we are going to have a dynamic value. What I mean by that is our folder path is going to contain the year and month. Let me show you what I mean. Let me go over to the data and let's go to our container. And as you can see here, this is the folder we want to delete. For example, for the year 2020 month 01, we want to pass in the parameter a silver/trip data green/year equals 2020 month equals 01, but everything else can be hard-coded. But the value of the year and the month has to come from our favorite statement. Let's see how to do that. I'm going to go back to the pipeline and let's get rid of the property. So we got a bit more space to work with, and let me click on the dynamic content, and then we want to give the hard-coded value, which is the silver/trip data green. And then we want to say, yeah, up to that point is okay, but now we want to insert the year from our for each iterator. So the way you do that is something called a string interpolation. So you got to let me show you that in the documentation. You can read it a bit more. So this is the syntax you use, so it'll be at and then curly bracket, and you close the curly bracket within the string itself. So let me show you how to do that. So you do it and then you need to put the curly brackets there. But as you know, the item that so represents the for each iterator current item, and you need to specify the attribute which is here. So all we've done here is with inserting the value of here from our for each iterator, and now you need to specify the month as well, and you can do that in a similar manner. So that will be it. And you can specify item and you do .month. So now when the expression's evaluated, it's going to have the year being replaced here with the year value and month being replaced with the month value. So that's exactly what we want. So let me click OK, and that's everything for the delete activity. So let's test this and make sure the delete activity works. And if it works, then we can add the stored procedure activity in the next lesson. So let me go back to the pipeline and click debug. So we got an error in the validation. That's because in the delete activity, if you enable logging, you'll have to specify the link service to point to the location where you're going to be logging. I'm going to turn it off so it's not logging anything. So that should disappear now. And let me go back to the pipeline and just click on debug. Okay. As you can see, the pipeline's now successfully completed, and all of the delete partition statements have been completed successfully as well. So let me quickly walk you through this one more time so that you've got a full understanding of this. So we had the script activity, into which we passed in the select statement, select distinct year and month from the bronze view. And that gave us the output, which is in this JSON structure. Let me make it slightly bigger. So as you can see, we got the output within that we got array call result sets, and within the first occurrence there we got array call rows. And that occurs 19 times, and each one's got the year and month related to each of the partitions. So we feed this into our for each statement. The for each activity then invoked the delete activities 19 times so that you can see in the input here. So it's 19 is the items count invoked the delete partition 19 times, and each of the time it would have sent in a different year and month. For example, here it's sent in 2021 and month 02. And if I look at the next one, that's got year 2020-02, so each time the delete activity was invoked with a different year and month. And if you look at the output, it'll tell you that it's deleted it. So we've got the folder path that's being deleted is the NYC taxi data, silver trip data green, and then you've got the full folder path of that, and the folder deleted here is 1. So when they deleted that particular folder, and it left everything else. And you may have noticed when you ran it, there were only 5 of them running at any point in time. And each time one of the activity finished and the other one came in because we set our concurrency to 5, or the batch count in this case till 5. So now we've got our for each activity and the delete activity within that working as expected. That's the end of this session. In the next session, build the stored procedure activity. See you then.